Hello, everyone, and welcome to the next episode of Speak, where I, Crystal Danbury, and the awesome Elisa Lynch are joined by Anna Keane. So you've heard our intros before, so we'll hand over to you, Anna. Why don't you give us a little bit about your background, who you are, and what you want to talk about?
Well, firstly, thank you for having me. It's an absolute treat. Anna Keane. I always feel like I need to go back into the depths of my history in these moments, but
Yeah.
I fell into working with safety professionals about 24 years ago. I left school, much to my parents' disgust, and they told me I needed to find a job. So I went to work at our local health and safety consultancy.
Nice.
And if we've got time, I'll tell you all about that lovely experience. But a year later, I decided to go to uni. I think it was probably the best thing I ever did. And then I've spent the last 20 years then recruiting and developing health and safety professionals.
Yep.
It's quite niche. When people ask you, what do you do? The recruitment part always gets a bit of a reaction. And then, 8 years ago, I set up a business called Acre Frameworks, really wanting to challenge the way safety professionals were developed. Crystal, you met me probably back then.
Yeah.
And having recruited people for a long time was starting to become frustrated, concerned that clients were asking us for people that could engage, innovate, could sit in curiosity. Probably weren't using that language back then. And our candidate pool was presenting people that could tell, police, enforce. So there didn't seem to be much happening in terms of kind of bridging that gap. So I built Frameworks, which was the most incredible journey of 8 years. And I left Acre back in January to do my own thing. And I think that's where our conversation around this subject came up, because it's one very close to my heart and very close to all of our hearts. But where is that next generation of leaders in health and safety? Where are they? What are they doing? How do we find them? How do we nurture them, grow them, give them a community? That's what I wanted to bring to the table. But just genuinely, lovely to hang out with you two. Thanks for having me.
You know what? Should I say the first question? So although I've heard you say about the next gen before, as you were saying that, my immediate question is, why do you care?
Why do I care?
Yeah, why do you want the next? Why do you want to find?
Because, certainly over the last 8 years, I've been blessed with working with just some phenomenally incredible people, at the top of their game in this profession, and actually people that were probably the next gen 5-6 years ago. I always talk about when I first discovered you, Crystal, it was a bit like finding a diamond in the railway. But there was something about actually, I've always been hugely passionate about supporting people through the kind of transition from doing the work to leading others doing the work.
Yeah.
I use the term sticky middle.
Yeah.
I think it's a really rough and difficult and challenging part of anyone's career journey, whether you're in safety or whether you work in finance or even in recruitment, where you go from doing the job to leading others doing the job. And next generation for me is the future. The people that are in those leadership roles now are only as good as the people that are coming up behind them, challenging them. So how do we maintain that kind of momentum? How do we give people opportunity to learn? How do we grow curiosity? And I work with this profession because I think what you do is so important and so under-recognized. I get to work with now, through the work that I did with Acre, safety and sustainability professionals, and whether you're protecting people or planet, that's good work. And we lose that in how we promote and talk about this profession. So I could go and do this with finance people and IT folk, I suppose, but my passion's always been working around this group. And as I think about what I do next, where do I focus my energy and effort? that's the group I've always got the most amount of joy with working with people that are coming through. Not that I don't love working with people at other stages of their career, but that to me is the sweet spot. That's where I think you can make the most impact.
Yeah, I love that. I think we did an episode that we called the Spotlight episode a little while back, didn't we, Lisa? And we were calling out people that just sort of blow our minds, actually, at any point in their careers, but quite particularly focusing on those people that we think. And I always use this phrase of like knocking the people that are going to knock me off my perch. Like, I cannot wait for somebody to be like, are you just keeping this warm?
Can you just
get out my way so I can just do this thing even better than you can. And I think that concept really excites me. That I think, well, we've had Chloe Hughes now, Kirkbride, I think it is. She's one of them that I know is at some point going to kick my perch and be like, listen, dude, you're in the way. Because she is not just in that sticky middle. She seems to be just transitioning all the way through it with such ease and grace.
Some people just glide through it with ease, don't they? It's actually like they were supposed to do the bigger job.
They were just
actually.
So I think that sticky middle piece, I think, is wonderful. And one of my favorite phrases before we dig into all of those points, the where are they, what are they doing, how do we find them, is one of my favorite phrases that I use with all of my guys is, you are not a leader until you have created another leader. And I think in one of our very early episodes, Elisa was talking about you can be a superstar in your workplace and you can transform it. But if it falls over when you leave, you did nothing. You just changed it for a bit. You did not create sustainable change because you didn't create all those bunch of leaders underneath you that can surpass you. So I think that's the bit, isn't it? Is who's cultivating those leaders, who can see them, who knows where they are. And
I think it takes a certain kind of leader to be comfortable with bringing people through. Like, there is that thing of like, hire people that are better than you. But that's like, that takes something in an individual to be able to do. One of the proudest moments of my like working within Acre is the team that I hired in that have gone on to do other things. Like I like that legacy, that difference you can make on someone. Like that far surpasses any kind of number or revenue or any kind of that's the difference. It's being able to make those moments of difference with people throughout their career. So cool.
Elisa, what are your thoughts? I could see you mulling.
Yeah, I'm mulling, and I'm also trying to cover a sneeze. It's the leader thing is interesting to me. And it's like leadership. And I was saying to you recently, Crystal, that this leadership thing is it's given me the fucking ick recently, and I can't put my finger on why. But I think a lot of it is that I don't believe people. I think I'm becoming really cynical. But like, I'll see stuff on LinkedIn and they're like, authentic leadership. And I'm like, what do you mean though? What do you mean? And like, if I'm struggling with it, I'm like, are there other people struggling with it? And we talk about leadership and we never talk about followership. And and it's really, and then the language around is all this kind of like messiah stuff. And I definitely know there's people who are like, I'm a leader. I'm like, shut up to fuck. You're not a leader. You are calling yourself a leader and you're an ego that is like so overinflated. And obviously part of the, like, who are the next gen, we definitely want to be able to divvy up and tell the difference. And a lot of people can't tell the difference, but a lot of people can tell the difference. See people and they're in certain positions and you go, oh, they must be unreal. And we kind of fill in the gaps ourselves, and we imagine what they're like. We imagine them leading. And then it's all us imagining, and people are more than willing to let us imagine that. And it just is all, I don't know, it's giving me the ick, and I can't quite.
So we
like, there's a thing, sorry, there was one other thing about this authentic leadership. I'm like, oh, an authentic, like, you can be a dickhead and be an authentic leadership. Like, people say, oh, if you're authentic leader, you must be like really nice, you're really good at it. I'm like, no, you could be bad and you're just really authentic. Like that is like this thing of authenticity. I just don't know if it's being used the right way. I'm rambling now. I've lost it.
Almost like it's been weaponized. Like,
yeah.
So I think a couple of things that spring out to me here is I have seen, and I will completely bring it back round to what we're looking for, because
yes,
what we're not looking for is those qualities, right? And what I will say is, you can have negative leadership or positive leadership, and I've genuinely, particularly in telecoms, actually, have seen real toxic leadership attract toxic leaders that create toxic culture, and very authentic, very honest about what they were driven by, not hiding it in any way. That is an authentic leader. They are saying, I'm driven by this number, I'm driven by my salary, I'm driven by my control, and look at what it's generating. But very interestingly, that's not anything that we would want to put in the roles that we are talking about, in the roles that we care about. So 100%, I think when we, and maybe this is it, is you really like a balanced view. But when we say leadership, we're automatically saying it in a singing, birds, whistling, flowers sort of sense.
Yeah.
Actually, what you full well know is you can have disgusting leadership. So it's not a general term that means just a positive thing. It's like culture. We use the word culture, and we are using it with flowers and bells.
Yes.
But there can be toxic culture and there can be fantastic culture. And there are things that govern or create both counts. So I totally understand that ick. And I think we should probably have a speak episode on the ick of the language that we're using when we are writing the posts. Like if
I definitely need to like articulate more for that. It's a whole other episode. I need to read. I've reading to do. I've a bit of stuff.
Yes.
So this is like scratching the surface of the ick.
Generating around the auto.
Not a fully formed ick yet.
Yeah.
Not a fully formed ick.
We're not diagnose the actual root cause of that ick.
Exactly.
And then we will have a speaker.
Yeah.
Well, you know.
So in terms of,
but I do think it's that catch-all term we use for the evolution of someone. And I also, something I'm really conscious of in my work is we so often tie development to progression.
Oh, yeah.
And actually the whole world of careers are changing. You know, actually, I love working with people around what does success mean like to them. And that might be, you know, doing the best work at a certain level in an organization or a certain role or with a certain level of expertise. It doesn't always mean about taking your boss's job.
Yes.
And we need to start to detach those two things, because the amount of times I go into teams and work with people and they're like, well, I don't want the next job, so why do I need to develop? And I'm like, okay, let's deconstruct that. But also I think we've been conditioned that the world of work only requires this kind of linear pathway. And I'm all about like breadth and tours of duty and experimenting and trying different things. So I think when we talk about leadership, I'm talking about like, who are the next generation of challengers, trailblazers, the people that are going to innovate, challenge, that are going to actually help us create the change that this profession is really trying to change, which is getting people home safe. Like, that's the bit. Like, where are they coming from? Like, where's that next wave?
Yeah.
Hopefully that eradicates some ick.
I mean, that is, yeah, I think spot on. The challengers, the innovators, the people that are going to allow this profession to evolve.
Yeah.
And I think that was one of I loved your point about progression and development. Can I just like touch that for a second? Yeah. I was having a one-to-one this week, and I'm always quite careful about the people that work for me or with me. But somebody said to me recently, they'd been challenged by a peer about like, what's the sort of plan to take Crystal's role? Like, how do you, like, how many years? What does that look like? And they were like, is it wrong that my automatic response was, what do you mean? Just wherever she goes, I shall just go. if she isn't here, I won't be here. I will just go and do that. And I don't want her job. I want to work for her. I'm quite fine leading under her. And he was like, I don't understand why everything's got to be about you not being there. So I used the kick the perch, get me off the perch thing. Lots and lots of people are just like, well, I feel like I found a synergy with somebody. I don't need the big job or the big title. I need to do great work. That does change something. So I think that I love that there is a difference between your growth and your career progression. You can still grow and want yourself to grow and advocate for yourself to broaden your skill set and become more potent in exactly what you're doing. And then that bit, I've forgotten the other bit about where all those people are, the innovators, the changers, and where are they all sat? And one of my thoughts as you were talking through that was, if they're all in the sticky middle, as you call it, then there has got to be a whole load of people heading up safety departments that are looking at these guys and doing their appraisals and doing their annual objectives and just being like, wow, they've got to, if you're secure enough to say wow. But how do we, LinkedIn's pretty powerful, call out the team members, people that are free to post and do whatever they like. But I also know that some companies make you sign a social media contract to say that you will not post anything to show caliber or your works. So LinkedIn isn't the only answer. So I am really curious about where they're all hired. Purely, I'd like to quite hire them all. Hello, talent, if you're out there.
Jobs going, guys.
That was the joy actually of working as part of a recruitment business. Like that's how you and I met, Crystal. Like you were having a conversation around your career, and then that was always the bit. The ones that I'm always, because I know they're out there, I meet them regularly. The ones that they are the safety person in an organization, like they're the one, maybe they're the one or two, like in a company. And there's still this sense of feeling like a little bit like a square peg in a round hole, like something just doesn't quite fit.
Yeah.
But they're in the work, they're in the company, maybe they're receiving leadership that is that ick kind of leadership. But there's something in them that is like, if you can find them, and that's why I love recruitment still, if you can find them and you can put them in the right organization, suddenly you watch these people absolutely fly. But it's getting them out of that, finding them and then getting them out. Because the thing is, and I think that is the bit.
And if they're not looking, then you're like, and it's because we talk about LinkedIn, and I'm full-blown addicted to LinkedIn. I love it. But like there's actually so few of us on there that use it, that really use it for networking and for community. If you think versus like how many safety professionals there are versus how many are actively using LinkedIn, it's like a drop in the ocean. But like, and for a long time I was that person in one of those companies thinking, this is it, there is nowhere else for me. Where else could I possibly get a role? I'm in the back hole of rural West Cork. Like, what else is there? And so if I wasn't on LinkedIn, I never would have moved. Like if I didn't have those connections with people,
didn't have that community, like
if I didn't have community, I never would have thought to make the jump. So to your point, how do you find them? How do you get to them?
Because no one teaches you that at any stage.
No.
It actually came up on a post today on LinkedIn about like, what was your one learning in terms of developing your career? And apparently I'd said to this person at some stage in their career, intentionally create a community around yourself, like go out and find the people that you align with, but also challenge. But like at no point when I've not done a NEBOSH, but I'm assuming that's not on the list of things you need to do, is go and find a community of people. And actually, as we move more and more remote in our learning, that becomes harder and harder. So unless you, I suppose, invest time in IOSH, or you are active in LinkedIn, or I think there's some brilliant work being done in like women in health and safety with these safety first events, which are just popping up everywhere and people just getting together and having a drink. But like, yeah, how do you, that community part is so critical in all of this, because, and I'll go there, especially as like a female in this profession, I find actually that community part is personally like one of the most valuable things that anyone can develop.
Yeah.
It's even going back to that, like that NEBOSH bit, and I'm not going to bang on about curriculums. I'm not going to wedge that in here.
There's an episode to speak on that, by the way.
There's a whole episode. But like, I think it's like it is our least listened to episode. But I don't care. But there is that piece of, do we get people at that education bit where it's like, whether it's university degree, whether it's NEBOSH, whatever it is, like, is that where we need to be aiming? Do we need to be contacting the institutions, the universities, and be like, are you creating this? Are you making sure that they know that they are going to need this community, especially for people who are teams of 1 and 2, where you're the only safety person in a business? It is lonely as fuck. And if you don't have somebody to bounce off of, yeah, it can be really tricky.
I think that I used an analogy the other week around like it takes a village to raise a safety professional. I really think it does. Like, but it's the same as anything else. So I like the combination. I often talk to people around. There's learning, there's a community, there's mentoring, there's coaching, there's like a number of things that you need. Like development isn't just one thing, it's like a buffet of things. You need different things at different times depending on like, and I've always considered like just even finding one mentor, that feels pretty restrictive, just to find one person that's going to meet all of your needs, versus actually having like a range of people you can pull on depending on what you need at what time and different challenges. Like no one person can fulfill every person's needs, like from a development point of view. So how do you have, that kind of in the ethos of it takes a village, how do you start proactively right from the beginning of your career creating that community, that learning, that network?
And I think on the mentor piece, like people would struggle when you're like, even when you said find like multiple mentors, I'm like, sorry, what? Like I wouldn't ask one person to be my mentor. Like people like, how do you even do that? Like, hi, excuse me, can you like be my mentor, please?
That's exactly how you
Jesus, I feel
do it. I remember someone in my network ringing me and saying, I've seen on LinkedIn that you know Crystal Danbury. And I was like, oh yeah, don't go.
Total cow.
Like, would you make an introduction? And I was like, no, just drop her a message. She's a wonderful human being. She'll give you her time. But it is that, like, this community, like as in the safety profession, I think are one of the nicest groups of human beings that are willing to give their time.
Generous humans. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So generous. Like, so yeah, I think that is maybe a blocker that we need to get past, is actually just asking for help. Like, will you be part of my community? I won't pest you on an hourly basis, but occasionally I'd just like to
just like to have
me again.
Yeah. I'll tell you what, so while you've been chatting away, I've written down a couple of things, and one of them was like the start of that journey, that square peg round hole piece. And it leads to that community, is you need people that understand what progressive safety looks and feels like, because in the organizations that we're typically attracted to, and I don't know if I'm speaking out of turn here, but we are quite attracted to a challenge. We want to go somewhere with purpose. We want to help something change, which means usually you're starting from a lower base than where you want to be. And what you tend to face into is a whole load of leadership that are typically compliance, at best, driven. And you're having lots of conversations around what good looks like and what bad looks like. And you are the odd one out at the beginning of that journey. And I remember my boss a long time ago when I was in rail. Oh my God. It kicked me out, Rich.
What?
No?
No, you're still
No,
here.
you're still there.
Good.
We all get to hear that.
And literally, Rich is on the other side of this thing, and he's worked out it's his laptop that breaks everything. And I was like, "What have you done?" Right. So no editing. Rich, it hasn't put me out.
This is it. This is real life, guys.
This is it. I was told when I went into a depot and I was chatting to some guys, and there'd been a secret electrocution, and they'd hidden it.
Jesus.
And they'd come into the office, and my nickname is Brommers, right? And one of them came in and went, Brommers, and they all looked at him, so they knew they were hiding it, looked at him and was like, Brommers, we've had an issue. Can we just show you what it is? I was like, of course. So I wander out and I have a look at the issue. And at the end of that day, my boss was there, and he'd gone through from the offices upstairs past the workshop where I would log on. And he was like, oh, you got a minute, pulled me outside and said, if you want to get anywhere, you have to stop being friends with these people, right?
Oh.
And he was my first ever big boss. And bearing in mind what my role before that was, I was like an engineer. I worked alongside the engineers to keep them safe, but I was also in the line of danger with those guys. And I remember going home and being like, the reason I went from there to here is because I realized no one was going to look after me, and I didn't want anyone ever to be managed by somebody that didn't care about their safety. So I had to get into leadership and management because no one was going to look after the me's. So I realized those types of managers existed, and I wanted something opposite, and I had to be the change. And then I went home and I was like, but if I want to be the change, and if I want to be a him, and so have I got to change? Am I not allowed to make friends with people? Should I not be going for beer? And I questioned everything about everything I was doing. And I remember laying in bed and thinking, no, they told me about the electrocution. They didn't tell him about the electrocution. It's not me. But I was very, very much a square peg in a round hole, massively uncomfortable. And it took me years to meet you, for you to say, do this survey and we'll see where you are on. And then you said to me, pretty much everything in your characteristics mirrors some of the greatest safety professionals that there is. And I was like, oh, okay, so I'm good then. Okay.
Yeah.
And it's the first time that I ever actually understood that I might be all right. You can't do it from inside these organizations. And there's going to be lots and lots of me's and you's and Elisas and whatever's in these communities, even at the bottom, who are being told, no, stop talking to the shop floor, start putting a suit on, stop wearing your jeans, all this stuff. And how do you get the message to them to be like, put your jeans on, go get dirty, understand what risk looks like, because actually that's what good looks like. Good doesn't look like, here is a piece of paper, I'm going to grade you on it, and I'll send you the report and we won't talk. So I think there's definitely something about not only us finding them, but them finding us.
Yeah.
And somebody saying to them, dude, you've nailed it, but you're working in an organization that doesn't understand what good looks like yet.
Okay. You're just in the wrong environment. That is it.
Yes, there are square pegs for that square hole. You deserve a bigger, more progressive, organically fucking driven organization, and we will do it. So I think maybe one of my calls, we usually do like call outs at the end, is if you're listening to this and you know somebody that is in a quandary of, am I in the right place? Am I working for the right organization? Do I fit? If there is anyone in your life that is thinking, do I fit? Send in this episode, please, because there are 3 people already on here. Link with us on LinkedIn. We tag people constantly that we have an awful lot of time and pleasure working with. You will connect with this community and come and find us, because you're absolutely, if you feel like you don't fit right now and the organization you're looking at isn't achieving greatness, you need to move up and out, and we'll connect you with people to have those better conversations.
Couldn't agree more. And even I did some work with my coach a few months ago, and it was part of my transition out of Acre, and she asked me a few questions that were really just really helpful. The first one was like, what are you good at? Second was like, you're happy when, I had to finish that sentence, and like, what's the difference I wanted to make? And then what do I need from my work in order to thrive? Like, what was the environment that I needed in order to be successful?
Yeah.
And even those 4 questions just made me recognize how disconnected I'd become from actually who I was, what I wanted to do. And sometimes it is those moments of absolute like, oh, now I know this, I need to do something about it.
Can't unknow it. You can't unknow
it. And yeah, and I think that is, I mean, like, it's a relationship. And I have so much love for Oka, don't get me wrong, but I think there's a point in time in a relationship where you just go, actually, this isn't serving me. And I'm a huge believer that employment has to be a 2-way contract.
Yeah.
It has 100%. To be so much about, are you getting something from that organisation? And it shouldn't need to be a messy breakup. It can just be, actually, we want different things. Like, and I support you and I'll cheerlead you, but actually I want something different. But I think doing that self-discovery, like really understanding, like, what is your purpose? What is giving you that kind of sense of like, oh, this isn't sitting right? I think simple questions, unpacking that, can actually just then help you recognize, okay, this maybe isn't the place for me. So time to go and find another place.
Yeah.
And I think I find the conversations, and I've been there, about like that whole, oh, I want to like reach out to someone. Like, what's the worst that's going to happen? Like, they don't respond. Like, no one's ever going to be rude. Like,
they won't respond, and I was shame spiral for life.
But that's so much about the way we talk to ourselves, and I could spend a whole like lifetime talking about the depth of work you have to do to start unpicking that. But we talk ourselves out of these things before we actually even get close to doing them. Sometimes I just have to send the email and shut the laptop and walk away.
Yeah, just go, send.
That is and you wouldn't believe the amount of times, even over the last couple of months since stepping back out on my own, I've sent an email and gone, and then like within a couple of minutes, they're like, oh yeah, I'd love to have a chat. And I'm like, oh, okay. So I guarantee they will never respond if you never send the email. Like, that is my only
fair point
kind of, so, but the other group I'm doing some work at the moment with a couple of introverts, because I find, or that's how they label themselves, find this whole introvert, extrovert thing. Like, I would say we're all quite extrovert in how we present. I think I'm slowly becoming more introvert over time. Like, I think it might be into my 40s, I just want to hide from the world. But like, there's an attachment to this kind of networking, building your community, and you need to be an extrovert to do that. I think we need to kind of disconnect that as well, because actually we're talking about human relationships. You only need like 3 or 4. Like, you don't need 200. You don't need to have a big brand and a big following on LinkedIn. We're talking about, who are your people? Like, who's your go-to? Brené Brown does a little exercise where you draw a very small square and you put a few names in it. Like, who's in your like in that square of trust? It's like, how do you find those people? But it's a bit like dating. You have to meet a lot of people to work out who those people are. Like, but yeah, how do we? Yeah, I think if they're working on their own and they feel like the square peg in the round hole, giving them permission, like, I will give my time gladly. Drop me a note. I'll have like 15, 20 minutes with you about
if you're thinking, oh, do, because the most potent you will ever get.
Absolutely dare you.
100%.
Because, like, I think giving people that opportunity to do that in that safe space. I think tapping into some of these communities that already exist. One thing that's come up in conversations I've had recently with like people in senior roles, when they talk about this group that are up and coming is how do we build curiosity in them, which I think is quite an interesting term. Like, how do we make them more curious? Like, it's almost like the leader feels responsible for giving that person ideas. And I think with all the, HOP, New View, Safety 2, like, it's like we're doing this stuff to them. That's been part of conversations recently about actually how do we give these people space to get curious themselves? And a lot of it is space. Like, how do we, for those people that are in teams already, where they have that opportunity, how do we give them space? How do we give them time? How do we give them opportunities to learn? I started doing work with with one of the conferences, and actually, how do we get a broader group of people turning up to those events rather than just the people in the senior level roles? Like, how do we get whole teams to turn up? Because that's another, it's an opportunity to broaden perspective, right? Like,
and maybe that's one of the things as well, Anna, is I find a lot of these conferences now, they aim specifically for the director because they're the budget holder. And the reason they're the budget holder is because then they want the sponsors to be able to sell them something. And so you end up with this little monotonous circle of, well, I'm only seeing the top tier of the safety profession every single time at every single conference, depending on how rich the organization is, all of them, same thing. But actually, wouldn't it be amazing if we had conferences really geared towards the sticky middle? Like, what should we actually be sharing? Where are the communities? Where are the live podcasts of the people coming through right now? And actually having it so that it's not, and I understand these things cost money to put on, but how do we do that networking thing in a different way? And I was thinking about how do you find those communities for free, especially if you are the introverted. And what I would say is there's, if you like a podcast, join the community under the, like, we don't actually have that from a Speak perspective, and maybe it's something we should think about. But like the rebranding safety podcast with James McPherson, really potent podcast, fantastic presenter. Peter Jenkins, also a completely incredibly intelligent guy. They have the Health and Safety Network as an example. Like, join them, suss them out. If you drop them 3 months later, if they are perfect, you're some of the best, most incredible people I've ever met have been through somebody putting me in a room that I wouldn't have been into. It's how me and Elisa met through. So join those. And I think one of the other things I thought is there is a really weird moment where you start getting asked to talk about your experience. And mine was fairly early on. And I think it was you asking me to come to an Inspire event. And I came with my paper and my post-it. I was like, what the fuck am I going to say? And writing. Oh my God. And it actually, Chloe Hughes, now Kirkbride, was in the audience of that and said that was the moment I decided I'm going to do it. I'm going to be a safety professional. And that's how, and then she found me later because I did another female, I think Women's International Day thing, and she found me there and told me. But you'll notice that I don't ever present. Berlin is the first presentation I'm going to do because I know that I don't really care about what I have to say, think, or share, and I should do more, but I want to be part of a conversation. That's how I connect. So you'll notice everything that I've ever done to date is a panel. I do speak with Elisa because I need the other voice in the room. And if you're an introvert and you're thinking, is it presenting that gets me over the line? Is it something? No, just ask to be part of a panel, sit with other people, have a better conversation in a different place, and you will start to be asked to join the broader conversation. So don't think that if you're not an extrovert and you can't stand like Heather Beach giving incredibly vibrant presentations, you can be an introvert on that stage, having a great, valuable discussion. So I think don't box yourself in based on whether you're introvert, extrovert. I think I definitely present as an extrovert, but they define it as one of the two things, isn't it? You either get your energy from people, or you lose your energy to people. I am an introvert, but I have learned to present myself as an extrovert wildly. A beer, and I'm definitely, and I'm absolutely an extrovert. But in the same, most of the people that I know that you think are 100% are knackered after a night with their people networking. They're done. So I think the non-limiting yourself, understanding that you don't have to be anything, right? Introvert, extrovert, there's space for you. Find that community. Link with people following the podcast you are, because you're likely to be like-minded. Ask the question. Ask somebody if they will coach you. I had it today, an incredible guy reaching out to me to say, we probably have the same looking job title, but I think you are further along than me. I want to know what that is. What did you do? Where did you go? Who did you talk to? What have you done? And can I have that? And I'm just like, I'll tell you who you need. You need a bit of Anna Keane. That's who you need, right? 100% you need a bit of Anna Keane. But equally, as a result of the Berlin post that I did this week, I've probably had 40 messages in my inbox about, how did you do it? Why are you on stage? What gets you there? But great, do that. Reach out to all the people that you're looking at and thinking, cool, what does that look like or feel like? And also share, like, tell us that you need to be shared, or you're looking for a job opportunity or something, because actually we all do really care about that next gen. We all do want the sticky middle coming up, and we want to know who you are. We'll come and find you and try and find you, but there's also some responsibility on the other person, right? To say, if you're feeling like square peg round hole, you want to make a bigger difference and you don't understand how, then you also need to put your hand up and be like, right, where can I go? What other places? Who can I connect with? Definitely. What are your thoughts, Elisa?
So definitely on the conferences bit, a lot of these people are not going to be at those conferences because the barriers to entry are massive.
Yeah.
Like I was telling you only today, I'm like, oh, I'll go to fucking Berlin, I'm hyped. It's costing me over $2,000 to get there. Annual leave, flights, tickets. That's the early bird price.
Yeah.
That's I'm such a fucking nerd. People are like, where are you going holidays this year? I'm like, I'm actually going to a safety conference in Berlin to meet my friends from the internet.
But it's going to be great.
I mean, look,
it's going to be absolutely great.
It's going to be unreal, but like that's the reality of it. And when you don't work for companies that can send you there or whatever, that's the reality. So it's I suppose it's just worth thinking of when we're like, how do we get these people in if they're not in those companies that are going to be sending them to these places? Then it goes back to that kind of free element, whether it's online webinars, that kind of stuff. How do we access them? And also these conferences, I can imagine, cost an absolute fortune to put on as well. So like it just is what it is. But I suppose it's where can we tap in some bit to it.
The Inspired things were very good for that.
Yeah, I literally wrote that down earlier. I was like, they were that was good.
So it's literally specifically geared towards, are you in that point that you're like, where am I going from here?
And they were just free events that we kind of put on.
Come, listen.
The other bit is that thing about very early on in the conversation of development not being tied to progression, with that written down here. Because I think that is so interesting that we automatically go, who are the next? And it's who are the next directors, global heads, That's where we're all looking. And it's like, it just actually bring the eye level back down. And where do people actually want to be? Where can they be most impactful? Where are they going to really shake shit up? Like whether it is like something to do with technology and safety, all that kind of stuff. Because there's so much of the progression that has to happen in safety as a profession that is so knowledge based. Like you need to be in the weeds of it. You need to know your shit inside out. And that's not that strategy level leader who's doing all the leading. It's the person doing the do. Those are kind of my takeaways.
I like your bit about it's not just the directors, it's the I had down here the challengers. You mentioned earlier, Anna, about this, the challengers and innovators. You're so right, Elisa. We need to stop thinking about, and we said this in your session actually in London, are you talking about the next, and in a loving way, not in an arrogant sense, the people in that room, high caliber individuals, are we talking about the next us? Because actually, the reason we were so successful was because we challenged everything that came before us and we were so different. So we have to assume that people are going to come up as the next are going to be different again. They're not going to be us. They're not going to be cardboard cutouts. And then also the people that are going to change the game, that has to be a broader view now. It can't just be the people sat in the director's seat of a footsie. It also has to be the AI embracers, the digitizers, the like, who are the ones that are creating the organizations on the periphery of our profession going to change it?
Also, there is that age bracket as well, where it's like this whole, I saw that room you had, I was like, holy fuck, that's a powerful room. Not that old though.
No.
You know, like that's quite a young level average wise. So you're not going anywhere anytime soon either, is what I'm saying. So yeah.
Yeah.
No, but that's the breadth, isn't it? Like, and there's now opportunities in careers to like do 2 or 3 years here and then go 2 or 3 years here. And like you build skills, experience, exposure, community throughout.
Yep.
That means if you want to get to that role, you arrive there with a lot of the people in that room had to fast track because the profession went from like the top job was like 8 levels down to suddenly it was like on the board or just off the board. And so the profession had to step up really quickly. I think I'd kind of like to leave a lasting kind of shout out. This is like the focus of my work going forward, is supporting these people. So I'd love to know what they need.
Yeah.
Like, what is it you need? If we're going to make this learning accessible, if we're going to help these people, then my request when you're thinking about that kind of, oh, could I drop me a LinkedIn message, tell me what would really make a difference to you. And I'll take on that challenge of kind of looking at how we create that in an accessible, affordable way. But is it already out there? Can we tap into other things? Or do we need to continue to build and evolve something that meets the ever-changing needs of this group? So I want to know what they need. I don't want to make assumptions about that. So
I like that.
And if there's people who are not in the safety profession, how are they getting their next generations? What are they doing?
Yeah.
Like we're not the only ones with this problem.
No, you're right.
We definitely have the problem where it's like how many people want to get into the safety profession. That's a whole other thing.
And I think there's a lot of formal route of learning, like in, if you're a HR professional or a finance professional, like it feels like safety's so broad. Like,
yeah, you can come in from any angle. It's like,
we're so fighting still about like what's the right way to do it, that actually like.
Oh, do you know what?
Yeah.
I think the best people that I've ever worked for, though, right, or I've ever had the absolute privilege of working for me, genuinely none of them were safety professionals first. They essentially did a project, and I got a message today from somebody in tech that was like, you've blown my mind with how incredible. Like, I didn't really want to do this safety project. And now I'm all the way through and I've learned so much and I'm inspired, like, oh my God, I realized what impact we can have. And I was like, this is why the majority of people that work for me did a project for safety, some sort of, and they're like, oh, this is incredible. I'm an operator, but I swear I can make a difference. You don't even have to be in this line of sight doing an EBOSH diploma, knowing this is what you want to do. You could be touching the periphery of this and thinking there's no way in because I'm on the outside, I'm an operator. Dude. And that is a gender
neutral dude,
right? I call my daughters, right? Facts.
The dudes and the lads, the gender neutral ones.
Guys, if you are looking on the outside of this and you're thinking, I would really love to make a difference, and I've started to look at the safety department, see the difference they're making, just reach out. And whether it's to the safety department in your organization or another one, the sticky middle is also all these incredible operators that are like, but my skill set is operations or HR or L&D. Come, like, we need all of your skills.
If a non-safety person arrives at the door, be like, I have an interest, they'll be fucking kidnapped. We'll be like, you're in ours now.
Facts.
Like, we're never letting you go.
Amazing. Well, I think that's a lush call out to land on. And I think the takeaway for me is actually the sticky middle can be quite uncomfortable, particularly the bottom of that sticky middle part. And you can feel quite out of your depth, like you're not in the right place, or maybe not even in the right career. But there is a whole bunch of people just waiting for you to come and knock on that door. Anna is asking for you to tell her what you need to get in the right shaped hole for you. So square peg, square hole, round peg, round hole. So it's been a real pleasure, Anna, to discuss this, like finding this next gen, what that really means and what we need. And I think quite a lot of that is open. We don't really know what or where they are. So we need to do some real thinking cap stuff. I think even off book, even off of Speak, just to say, how do we do Inspire 2.0? How do we reach out to people in the middle? How do we present to them and tell them what the opportunities are? Because they were fantastic events. So yeah, thank you very much for joining us.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's been a joy.
Well, I will say to the audience, thank you very much for joining us for this episode of Speak. Join us in 2 weeks' time where we'll be talking about something else with someone else. Take care and good night.